All right. Shall we get started then?
And
Great. All right. Well, welcome everybody to Naturally Connected Life. We're going to be doing our webinar today on food sourcing and preparing for any changes that might be coming up. And getting ready for the holidays is included in that. And so everybody should be able to see a slideshow right now, right, Rachel? That's showing up on your screen. Great. And so, we at Naturally Connected Life and just how we live, even if things weren't as crazy as they are right now, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are applicable anytime. Because if you want to find the best products for the best prices, you and save money and save a lot of time, right? This is part of also how we more efficiently support our healthy lifestyle because we don't have to spend so much time going grocery shopping and buying all these things and lugging around um, tons of heavy bags and all that kind of stuff. So this is going to be great, useful tips for saving time and saving money and saving yourself the stress of wondering whether or not you're getting products that are really in alignment with your health and your ideals. So there we go. Food sourcing simplified. So the goal here, we want you to leave at the end of this webinar feeling confident to be able to find healthy food no matter what the world throws at us. So who are we? Well, I'm Eric, and I've spent thousands of hours researching food and reading labels at the grocery store. And I've spent years working in the food industry, many years. And I am obviously a committed and dedicated person to connecting people to traditional foods and from regenerative producers because what I've come to be very clear is that what is good for people is good for the planet and for the animals. And Rachel, if you want to introduce
hi,
yourself.
I'm Rachel. I think most of you already know me, but some fun facts that are related to food sourcing about me are I spent several years working on a few different farms. I have even taught children how to process chickens. If you don't know what that means slaughter chickens. I have spent many years cooking, processing, preparing traditional food, nourishing foods, work from scratch, doing all of those things, canning, and all of the fun things. And way before COVID, I was a closet prepper and was eating and was storing food and making sure that we had a lot. So saving up for a rainy day kind of situation, despite the fact that I'm a minimalist. So you can be both is one of my mottos also. So that's us.
And today we will cover. So obviously, we know there's a lot of things changing in the world right now. So we want to discuss some of those changes and how they might be creating some problems for those of us who do want to still have control over the quality and integrity and ethics of our food. So we're going to be covering the political impact, shortages, corporatization of food, and discussing also where our food is coming from. Then we're going to go into some of the solutions that we have implemented for ourselves that we want to share with you. So things like where to get food and what things might be useful to have to buy to be stocking up on. So what are the next steps? So obviously right now, and I think that's true pretty much anytime throughout history. This isn't really going to ever change, but politics do have a huge impact on our food and what we're able to buy, what it costs, and everything that goes into how we feed and nourish ourselves. And right now, because of some political decisions that are being made, it is driving a major labor shortage. It was bad last year. It's maybe getting worse now, and everybody just seems to be pointing the fingers. But the reality is that we do have ways to avoid some of the places that these labor shortages are really having a major impact, which is largely on packaged foods and foods that are being shipped or trucked, because trucking is also a major bottleneck right now. And as you can see, that is driving inflation. So even if you can get products right now, you've probably noticed that they're more expensive. So what are we going to do about that? And Rachel, you want to cover this one?
Yeah, so centralization is another issue that we're being faced with. So many companies are being bought up, and the reality is for the specifically meat, but also processed foods. They are being controlled by a small number of processors or companies that are processing. There's a lot of red tape around slaughterhouses, meat, what's okay to be processed where. There's a very limited number of organic processing facilities, and the meat processors there's really just like four main meat processors for other non-organic food. So they really control all of it. They are the ones that are, you know, forcing people to quit their jobs, shall we say, or are, worried about closings and things like that. So that because of that, they are really centralizing the food system and creating this bottleneck of all of the corporatization and all of the control being under, these three companies, specifically Tyson, Cargill, and then these two Brazilian companies that actually process in the United States as well. So that's one of the problems.
Hmm. Great. And so what we're seeing right now is that there's many different bottlenecks in the supply chain, and something that is now coming up and becoming more well acknowledged is that problems from last year are creating problems with fertilizer production. And so if we're not eating organic, that's definitely going to be showing up, impacting our wallet. But interestingly enough, this is also impacting a lot of large scale organic producers. So, one of the things that we're going to talk about, with corporatization is that even in the organic industry, that has been, uh, really infiltrated and controlled by just a handful of larger corporations, and they've manipulated a lot of what the organic standards have become, so that they are essentially still a chemical-based agricultural industry. So this is going to be affecting a lot of organic products that you see on the shelves too in grocery stores.
Mostly organic processed foods, companies like Applegate or Organic Valley, all of those processor or all of those packaged meat products are going to be the most affected or the first affected, shall we say, in this. In regards to shortages, though, I just want to jump in with a little bit. We can't really, it's really difficult to research and speak to exactly the one factor that's causing shortages. So it could be many things. There are many factors that are going into this, trucking, shipping, the like shortages of workers and processing facilities and things like that. And there are rumors of people being of farmers being told to destroy crops and things like that. Unfortunately, I was unable to find any really conclusive evidence of that being true, with the exception of one thing that we know for a fact is our one of our well, one of the places we get meat from is Miller's Organic Farm. It's also where we get our raw dairy from, and they were slapped with some USDA fines that were upwards of several hundred thousands of dollars, which for a farmer is just ridiculous to have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. But some of those fines, some of those fines and I guess whatever the charges brought against them would require them to destroy hundreds of thousands of pounds of frozen meat as well. So luckily they've been able to escape that by selling it all within 90 days. And so therefore they didn't have to destroy, but whatever that they did not sell within 90 days, they had to destroy. Well, it will have to be destroyed. So it's, granted it's frozen meat and it's something that they've been processed. And so because it's frozen, it only has like a specific shelf life and things like that. But it's just really like an example of coming down on the small scale farmers who are able to meet demand for their customers instead of these large corporations.
Right. Yeah. So, for people who buy, maybe they buy an entire cow worth of meat for their family and they freeze it and that they eat that over the entire year. Frozen meat is safe, lasts a really long time, and these new guidelines seem absolutely arbitrary and will force many small suppliers, small retailers, to destroy products that is completely safe and saleable. And this, I think, goes hand in hand with corporatization, because, if you just look at like how just a few corporations own pretty much every company, every product you see at your grocery store, and this goes for companies like Whole Foods. That there's just several main suppliers that provide product to a just large distributor like UNFI, and Whole Foods is the largest customer for UNFI. And then if you go to the grocery store, and you might have noticed this, you go to Whole Foods, and then you go to Publix, or and you go to Trader Joe's, or several other companies, and you see the same suppliers. You see the same Driscoll's, Berries, and everything else. That's because there's been so much consolidation in the food industry, and what we're seeing right now is that centralization, that consolidation, creates fragility. It doesn't take much at all to completely destabilize this system. And that's not even going into how they've undermined the standards of food and quality and everything else.
And this goes for the organic brands as well. A majority of the organic brands that we would purchase, everything from even a bag of rice from one of the organic brands that carries it to something that's actually like a processed food, is owned by one of these larger corporations that does not, obviously they don't care for standards in organic, and they don't have a mission that's driven to ensure healthy food for the planet, healthy food for people. They are just pumping out, it's just another business call or another product on their shelf, and another product line for them to carry, and they don't really have any accountability or interest in standards that would support regenerative agriculture and healthy humans and things like that.
Right. So even one of our favorite brands, Epic Bars, that does regenerative uh, animal meat products, is owned. I think it was like a $3 million investment from Nestle. So it's so pervasive. Any brands that get big enough to be noticed, it's very likely that they will eventually have to compromise their ideals to remain competitive and to continue to operate at scale. And so now we want to look at, like, okay, so um, who's actually benefiting from all of the chaos right now? Well, we know that people like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos are pushing uh, a very specific agenda. They have been vilifying meat and animal products for a very long time, ignoring the evidence for supporting regenerative agriculture and how that is benefiting the land, and taking the stance that GMO crops and things like completely lab grown synthetic beef are the only way to save the planet. And Bill Gates denies that there's any real agenda to this, but his investment portfolio is buying up hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland all over the country. And this kind of land grab has definitely accelerated in the last year. And I don't see that stopping anytime soon. And this is another way that they're just going to be consolidating and driving down choice and exerting controls over a system that you know was able to operate with some element of independence. So this is so critical right now that we support small farmers and help them maintain their connections to the land. Otherwise, we're going to be eating fake meat in the very near future, whether we like it or not.
And along the lines of the farmland, Bill Gates is not the only one buying up farmland. It's also Chinese corporations buying up a lot of farmland. In fact, a large percentage of American farmland is owned by Chinese corporations, and so this farmland is not, so it's not being like bought up and then not used. It's being bought up and then rented out to farmers, so it creates this level of control where they are indebted to and have to do the bidding of these corporations, Bill Gates, Chinese corporations, all of those, and they are essentially not feeding Americans. In a lot of cases, they're actually exporting a lot of their product to China, or they're exporting their product to other places. So I think that's the next slide, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So these, I think maybe we take that out. So yeah, so this farmland, it doesn't just sit there. Why it's considered a good investment by somebody like Bill Gates, whose portfolio is being managed by very well-seasoned experts, is that yes, they lease this land out, and they're able to control who gets to use the land, and also they can manipulate how the land is used by what they charge, and forcing them to produce high intensity monocropping agriculture products
A lot of
versus
soy.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of soy, which seems insane because supposedly, Bill Gates wants us to eat 100% synthetic beef and you know and plant-based proteins because for the environment, and yet he is promoting, the monocropping destruction of our environment in order to produce these things. And what we're also seeing is the decline in or the illusion of choice. And so this graph just really clearly illustrates how our diet has been manipulated over the last 100 years. And you can see that just before 1969, that light blue line for oils, vegetable oils, like soybean oil, canola, or rapeseed oil, and all the others, starts to make its debut. And all of the traditional fats start to make their exit. And look at what's happened. Now we have this incredible influx of vegetable oils that have just dominated our fats in our diet. And this is, obviously something that we directly address with our nutritional program. Um, but in order to create some sort of health and stability for ourselves and our family, we have to recognize this major problem and start to revert back to the traditional fats and get away from all the processed stuff. Because even all of the organic stuff. I mean, if you go to the hot food bar at Whole Foods, it blows my mind that almost every product on that hot bar has canola oil in it. It might be organic canola oil, but it's still canola oil.
And that even 10 years ago was not the case. You could go into Whole Foods 10 years ago and most of the baked goods or whatever were actually still made with butter, um, or even sunflower oil or things like that. Whereas now it's because I don't know, because of inflation, because of like how much cheaper it is, they have switched to, and now they're all pretty much all canola oil in them. So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. And then talking about the insanity of globalization, this really does illustrate how crazy it is. So, you can see this major pivot that happened between 2006 and 2007, and that like went way off in the other direction. So the light blue is exports of meat, and the dark blue
meat
is
specifically cows.
imports. No, this includes beef,
It
veal,
says,
lamb, pork.
oh,
Yep,
well, red meat. Yeah.
yeah, all red meat. Um, which is crazy. Like, what? Why are we importing so much of it? And a big part of like what happened is that we started offshoring everything, including processing. And so a lot of processors here in the US, it became cheaper for them to import, for example, grass fed meat from Australia than it is for them to buy it locally here in the US.
And another one is pork, or even just most chicken's not included in this graph, but pork and chicken both are frequently, they send the live animal across the ocean to China to be processed, to be killed and processed, and then the finished product is shipped back. How is that cheaper? I just, that's, one of those things. You're like, how does that make any sense? I'm sorry.
Yes. So globalization is a huge, huge problem and really kind of obscures the underlying problems. It makes it really difficult to pinpoint what's really going on and who's to blame for what. And so, really, our only option is to become aware of what's going on and then look for the solutions that allow us to opt out of the insanity. And this does affect people who are already pretty aware and trying to be healthy because, for example, most superfoods are imported or coming from places that where native cultures and native food systems have been displaced by first world demand. And this also includes, things like fresh fruit. So whereas here in the U.S. we produce fresh fruit in the summer, most of that gets consumed domestically. In other countries, they don't have that luxury, so they're growing things that are not native, like North American blueberries and strawberries and stuff like that, in places of Latin America that are actually not uh, suitable for these things. They're not native to them, to these regions, but they're being grown in conditions um, to just to be exported for our consumption, to have fresh fruit in the winter. And like I said, this also goes for grass-fed meats. It's crazy that I can go to the health food store here in town, and they have grass-fed meat imported from Australia, and it's cheaper than the grass-fed meat that is literally grown about 20 miles from here. But that is, again, that it's the nature of the beast and the system that is designed to make it very difficult, if not impossible, for small suppliers to compete in a globalized market. And then seafood, pretty much all seafood. I mean, it's crazy. Like 60+% of the seafood consumed in the United States comes from Asia. And if you know anything about that production and the standards and everything like that, um, you know that that is not a good use of resources. And then finally, also, that a lot of people rely on coconut products, especially as they try to become more healthy, more conscientious. And those are also playing a major role in deforestation and displacement of local food systems that are creating food insecurity elsewhere, just so that we can have these products that are not produced here.
It's funny, like you said, all of these are things that people are trying to do to eat to be healthy. Like they think that, oh, I'm gonna eat seafood, and oh, I switched to coconut oil, and I'm eating fish or whatever, and all of those things, and I'm eating my smoothies in January, and all of those things that are actually terrible for the environment, mostly terrible for the environment, but also not really conducive to health in the long run either. So, and the coconut products, I mean, even it's hard to get away from the coconut products. So we can relate to the dilemma of it. Um, it's not an easy thing, especially in the health world.
So, the easiest way to start to figure out how we can change our habits to be a part of creating a solution for this is to just imagine that you could only eat what you could actually grow on your own farm. So, what would you be eating? What does that look like? Well, if you're not really sure, go to your farmer's market and see what they have, and you'll see like things like meat and dairy and eggs are pretty abundant, almost throughout the entire year, just depending on, certain circumstances. And then you have an abundance of fruit and vegetables in the summer. And then you have certain winter vegetables and things like that that are still being produced fresh in the winter.
Or
So what does
storage.
that leave us with? That leaves us with, okay, if we can grow these things on our farm and we know when they're in season, when they're fresh, but we want to have them year round, how do we make that happen? So, a big part of that is one, knowing where to get these products, and then two, knowing how to preserve and store and have these things available at an affordable cost. Throughout the year, they're just not going to be probably in the same form as when you buy them fresh. But
So,
when we do buy, oh, go ahead, Rachel.
okay. It's okay. So I'll just start with so some of the things that we obviously advocate for. So anyone who knows our general stance on food knows that we advocate for eating meat, eating dairy, eating lots of fruit. So when buying meat, local is obviously the absolute best. Um, there's many options for how to buy local meat. And we can get it. We'll actually get into those in the next slide. Dairy, we really propose to buy raw and local. There are a lot of health benefits to having dairy be raw specifically, and we really advocate for those uh, getting your dairy locally. Cheese is a little bit different because cheese is literally made to package well, or to preserve milk. So it does travel a little bit easier. And if you're getting cheese that's raw, you can still get great raw cheeses from your grocery store, even because they actually don't follow the same guidelines and standards that milk does. But Yeah, and then veggies and fruit, local CSAs, farmers markets. We actually have a program here called a Mother Earth Box, which is similar to a CSA, but you get to customize it. So finding local buying options and local buying clubs are great ways to get all of the products that you need and to locally. Um, did you want to jump in with something, Eric?
Yeah,
Okay.
we listed here the website realmilk.com, and that's actually an offshoot of the Weston A. Price Foundation. That because they really are big proponents of raw milk and traditional foods, and through that, you probably will be able to find um, good sources of other high quality foods. So most of those providers will also probably have good meat, good eggs, probably have produce and preserved foods, traditionally preserved foods that are not going to have all of the chemical additives and questionable things in them for that come from large scale production. So definitely look into that resource and try to get yourself hooked up and create those relationships now, because the stronger those relationships are that you create now, and obviously invite your friends and family to also support these folks so that um, that they're going to be around for a good long time.
So getting into things that you might not be able to buy locally easily. Things like grains and staples. Some of the places that a lot of people buy from online, there are pros and cons to all of these. Um, one that we use that we really love for buying food in bulk is Azure Standard. They have a commitment to organic food and healthy environment, all of that. They do shipments, so it's like a once a month uh, you meet a truck, they unload a bunch of stuff, you get bags of grain or cans of beans or whatever it is that you order. They literally have everything from animal feed to candles to large bags of oatmeal. They have everything. And it's a really great way to start that bulk buying or stocking up. And their prices are really competitive, sometimes cheaper, a lot of times cheaper for certain things. If you're looking for a frozen fruit, which is a great way to harvest and preserve fruit, they have excellent frozen fruit that is pennies on the dollar, like cheaper. Um, than otherwise. Then there's obviously things like Thrive Market or Butcher Box or online stores that, as far as we can tell, are not owned by anyone specific or not in the pockets necessarily of large corporations yet. Um, but you still don't know necessarily the sourcing of their products, and with Thrive Market specifically, a lot of the items are, they're processed or packaged foods that may be actually coming from someplace that's, there might be some problem with that, or there might be some downfall to that. And then if you're just going to your regular grocery store, what to get, remember, simple, low ingredients, long shelf life, all of those things are great because you don't want to have a less ingredients equals lasts longer usually. And we don't need all those chemical additives. We don't need the processed foods. It's nice to have crackers, but like get crackers that have 4 ingredients instead of crackers that have 25 ingredients and 5 of them you can't even pronounce.
Absolutely. Another good online retailer we were looking at is Thousand Hills.
Oh yeah, they you can buy them in grocery stores, your local food co-op. But yeah, Thousands Hills is grass-fed meat that's grown and processed in the United States and doesn't ever leave the United States. It's shipped, you can buy directly from them, and it's significantly cheaper to buy directly from them. And if you have a freezer and you can stock up your freezer with meat, then they have if you buy like $200 worth of product, they have free shipping, because obviously
Yep.
shipping frozen meat's not cheap. So it makes it worth it to get
Yep. And
a
they
larger
were
quantity.
they were started by a farmer,
Hmm.
a cow farmer. Well, actually, his story is that he like reacquired his family farm that had just been devastated by monocropping GMO agriculture, and he took over and implemented regenerative practices, and then created this large company that's decentralized. That's a big part of his focus is decentralization. So rather than acquiring more land or figuring out how to get more farmers in his pocket, he focuses on empowering farmers to become independent business people with practicing good practices that he can then support financially through his company. So he's another great company, and so these are all just really great suggestions, places to get started. But the most important thing is that you really want to look for ways that you can connect in person. And that's another reason why we really like the Azure Standard. And also, even like, here in North Carolina, technically raw dairy is illegal, but we can be a member of a cooperative, a collective that imports it. And then it's kind of like going around these things. But both of those, because we have a pickup and there's like a little bit of community, we get to meet other people who are also sharing these ideals and, putting their money where their mouth is. It's really nice to be able to connect that way.
We also push it on our friends
Yeah.
too, which is great.
Yeah. So, especially right now, it's really important to just make sure you got a little bit of extra stuff packed away, and you want to focus on the things that are probably going to fly off the shelf if there's any sort of panic, right? So make sure you got your toilet paper. Um, but we would uh, we would suggest is actually do yourself a favor and get one of these little bidets that you can install on your toilet, and then you don't even need you can use toilet paper, um,
You use
and
minimal
then
amounts of it.
yeah, and then moving on to the things that you can eat, get meat, get chicken, things like that that you can very easily freeze and just stock up so you have a good extra supply of that, especially right now because as we get towards the holidays and the winter, it is looking like there might be more price increases. So if you want to save yourself a little bit of money heading into the holidays, stock up now. And then you can do the same thing with dairy. You can actually, when you buy milk, you can pour some of it off and freeze it. And
You're buying in the half gallons. We buy several half gallons at a time actually, and you pour off, there's the top part, and as long as they're the plastic half gallons, you can freeze them. They're great.
exactly.
And
Yep.
it doesn't affect the quality at all. I mean, technically, I guess it's probably not as raw, at that point, but it's also not, but it's still not pasteurized, so it's great.
Yeah. And and eggs too. Especially if you're buying them local and they're very
Fresh, yeah.
fresh. Eggs can last for several weeks and be totally fine in the
Even,
fridge.
yeah.
So that's easy to stock up on, and then just kind of go through that. And these are also just good ways to like save yourself some time. Instead of going to the grocery store once or twice a week, you can really stock up on a lot of stuff, and then avoid having to constantly be going to get groceries. And when it comes to dairy, you really want to make sure that there's no added fortification, so vitamin D and vitamin A, and then a lot of people that think they have a problem with dairy, it's probably more likely that they have a problem with pasteurized dairy that's also been fortified. And so, the pasteurization process and heating the dairy changes the structure of the proteins and forces them to kind of clump together and makes it very difficult to digest. Whereas when people switch to raw dairy, oftentimes that's not a problem at all. And then you want to make sure you got good supply of fats, and obviously that means throw away the vegetable oils, all the polyunsaturated fats. and make sure you got a good supply of butter and things like beef tallow. And every time that we cook a chicken, we save those drippings and throw it in the pressure cooker with the chicken carcass, and cover that in water and make meat broth pretty much every time we have a whole chicken. We try to do that like once a week, because having good beef, good chicken broth is really great for our health. And the stuff that we buy in the store is generally overpriced and just complete garbage.
Yeah,
Um,
the other thing I was gonna say about, fats, obviously, we know that, everyone's like, "Coconut oil is a great fat because it lasts forever, refined coconut oil," but again, we're trying to go with local, and sunflower and avocado oils are actually made in the United States and usually processed in the United States, so that's a great thing. Olive oil, depending on where you live, but you actually can get local olive oil if you live in Texas or, California, or both of those places, there are local versions of olive oil. So that would even be more preferred to than the other versions. Welcome to the call, Arlo.
mhm,
So yeah, and then fruits and veggies. We want to. And anyone who's on our program knows this, but we advocate for fruits and vegetables that are low in beta carotene and in season. Like certain foods, leafy greens really don't last very long, anyways. But if you stock up on root vegetables, things like turnips or rutabagas, potatoes, all of even celery and carrots, but carrots that are white or rainbow carrots are the best, and you can get those in large quantities, and they last a long time in your refrigerator. We frequently have had, a large rutabaga in our fridge for almost 2 months, and it's perfectly good still. So the especially going into the winter, those root vegetables really go a long way to providing good food, or good food locally that you don't have to go out and buy and get again. And then grains and staples, again, buy in bulk. We can't say that enough. Buying in bulk makes it economically better. It just makes it quality better, and it's just overall better for the environment. You have less packaging, less everything, and it's so much better. Buy from trusted sources. You can usually find out who, especially for grains and when you're buying in bulk, most of them will tell you in the product, like where description, it'll tell you where it's processed. So if it's oats, it's 99% likely that it's coming from the United States. But things like certain rices and certain beans and things like that might be coming from other countries, and you can specifically find rices and beans that are here that are coming from the United States. So it's easy. It's not that difficult to find that information. Um, yeah. Oh, somebody has a hand raised. We have. Oops. Nope. Just kidding.
where'd you go?
All right. I don't know. Anyways.
That's weird.
Uh,
I was trying to
okay.
give her permission to talk.
Yeah. All right.
Okay,
So moving on.
great. And then we really want to make sure that we are cognizant of what we want to avoid, because it's so funny because I see a lot of these like preppers and doomsday folks. Honestly, I definitely don't think it's going to be that bad. I really just want to make sure that we don't have to go several weeks or whatever without certain things. I just want to have a buffer to make sure that if there is major kink in the supply chain, that we don't have to just not eat meat for a week or two or something like that. um, or if
We
whatever
did. We're
whatever other
resilient.
staples.
We're capable.
Yeah,
We can handle
yeah.
it.
And I see a lot of preppers and things like that, and buying a lot of these heavily processed
They're
products.
awful.
And yeah, it's just like I would have to be really, really, really hungry to have to eat
So
that stuff.
in relation to that, my recommendation, because I've done a lot of research in this, my recommendation is if you're going to purchase quote prepper food, go for individual freeze dried ingredients. Things that you can get vegetables or fruits that are just single ingredient freeze dried. You can get milk that's just single ingredient freeze dried. Um, Things like that. So go for single ingredient freeze dried if you're going for the prepper food. Don't, or cans. Cans is good. Like canned beans, single ingredient, or soups that are low ingredients. Cans really do, like, you can look on the USDA website. They even say that canned goods, like, they will degrade in quality. I was actually just watching a video about this last night. They will degrade, the food will degrade in nutrition and quality technically, but it's still perfectly safe to eat canned goods that are 20 years old. So the reality is we're not going 20 years. We don't have to go 20 years like without food. Canned goods are just as good for prepper food. We don't need these 50-year-old, these forever foods that are going to last like hundreds of years, freeze dried, packaged crap, because we just don't need it. Like the reality is this crisis will pass by then.
Absolutely. So what do we want to look for? And this is just in general too. These are the things that we avoid in our own diet. So pretty much anything that's fortified, and this includes orange juice. That's another one they sneak a bunch of this stuff into a lot of products like that. The vitamin A is a synthetic form of vitamin A. It's retinol palmitate, which is highly toxic to the system and causes a lot of problems. And Arlo is making some edits here, and then they also add vitamin D2 or D3, and you can see that I put vitamin in quotes here because one, vitamin A retinol palmitate is not a vitamin; it's a synthetic, completely unnatural form of a retinoid that does not occur in nature, and has been proven to cause things like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and other neurological problems, tons of stuff. And same thing with vitamin.
We can go into more detail at a different time. So just for the sake of time.
Just a major focus of our study here. And same thing with vitamin D. It's not a vitamin; it's a steroid and a hormone. And supplementing with it has also been proven to cause major problems. And that's also, we'll probably cover that in another webinar, specifically talking about the current issues that we're facing. And then we see this in a lot of flour-based products, that they're fortified with iron and synthetic B vitamins, which also are major contributors to a lot of our chronic health issues. Next, we have natural preservatives. So in a lot of organic foods, that preservative might be a fake form of vitamin C. So it could be labeled ascorbic acid or citric acid or some sort of sorbate, things like that. These cause major problems.
If you're getting a citric acid or a product that's not organic, the citric acid is very likely GMO.
Yeah, made from GMO corn. And these cause major problems with, they dysregulate our iron and our copper. And then we also see, even in a lot of organic products, we see different types of benzoates used as a preservative. And, this is another nasty thing that's snuck into a lot of our health food products. And then another one that I think is a huge trick is pink Himalayan salts. This is not food; it's rocks, and they are very high in iron, and that's what makes it pink. It's actually rusted iron, and that's becoming more and more commonly used in place of just normal sea salt in a lot of health food and organic products. So look out for that. And then what we also look out for is something called annatto. And if you are eating a product that has an orange color, it is very likely annatto, and that's a type of a carotenoid, and it's linked to especially kids with neurological issues like autism is a major trigger. But yeah, that's a carotenoid, causes problems. And then also paprika is used to add color to a lot of different foods, and a lot of people don't realize that they're sensitive to nightshades, and that many of the processed packaged foods that they eat, even things like hot dogs, have paprika added to them. If you're stocking up on water, don't stock up on spring or mineral water. Again, this is just drinking water with lots of rocks in it. And these rocks our bodies cannot use as electrolytes the way that we can use minerals from food, especially like from fruits and animal products. Not the same. Spring and mineral water is definitely a contributor, making things worse, especially with iron dysregulation. Then we also want to be making sure that if we're buying any products for for use or for storage, that we have to look out for the different types of PUFA oils, polyunsaturated fatty acids. And so the major culprits are like canola or rapeseed, soy, and cottonseed, but people don't realize that peanuts, peanut oil, hemp oil, flax oil, and even fish oils are also PUFA oils, and they are
All of
also going to
these,
contribute to problems.
yeah, all of these go rancid so quickly. Even if you were going to consider consuming them, like hemp or something like that, they go rancid so quickly. They are just not conducive to storage food at all. So I don't recommend keeping them around for long periods of time ever, unless you're literally going to eat your hemp seeds the day you buy them. Like, just skip it because it's
Yeah,
going to go bad so quickly.
yeah, and they are kept in the fridge and away from light. Um, Kate Snipes, let's see, I gave you permission to speak. You just have to unmute yourself if you had a question.
Sorry, that was by accident.
Oh, okay, great, no problem. All right, and then so we also have the other obvious chemical additives, artificial colors, artificial flavors, and gums and things like that that are much more common in foods that might be intended to last a while. So looking for anything like that, if you can't draw a picture of it and it's on the ingredient list, then you probably shouldn't buy it. And then when it comes to buying like grains and staples, if you're going to buy flour, we do not recommend you buy whole grain flour because that contains the PUFA oils that are naturally occurring in the grains, and those are going to cause your flour to go bad a lot faster. So if you're going to buy flour, buy refined white flour, and then otherwise only buy whole grain that hasn't already been ground into flour.
If you want to get real fancy and cool with it, you can, like I said, he said, buy the whole grains and get a grain mill, and then you'll just end up grinding your own flour. So, because the grain, as long as it's intact, the kernels are, as long as they're intact, they last a very, very long time. And putting them in buckets and inside plastic bags with oxygen absorbers and all that, you can easily store them for very long periods of time, like 20 years plus. But they will, if they're ground, that's when they start to go bad and oxidize.
Yeah, and then some people might say, "Oh, but white flour is so bad." Well, I don't eat wheat for nutrition. I eat it for carbs. I eat it for bread as a carrier for my butter that has the nutrition, or for the sandwich, the meat and the cheese and things like that that have the nutrition. And so that's a big part. Like, get away from the idea that you need to get nutrition from whole grain flour. That's, I think, is nonsense.
This
And
goes along with
focus
the
on the
PUFA.
things. Yeah, and focus on the things that really do have the nutrition you need. So, if anybody has any questions, we'll try to wrap it up here and talk about another
Does
seminar
Arlo
that,
have any questions?
yeah. She's
You go
like,
back to the question. So, anyone have any questions at this point?
okay, great. I guess we covered things pretty well.
Right.
Cool. So now what?
So going back to question polls, I actually would like to still see who feels prepared for impending potential food shortages. Raise your hand if you feel prepared. You can do your actual hand raising or the. Did we just lose everyone? Is that?
I just sent a poll.
Yes. Do you know what to buy? I'm wondering if it's just not working very well, the attendees. Okay, so I guess we'll just keep moving on.
Great. Well, so far, let's see. We've got 4 no's and 1 yes for feeling prepared. Okay. And let's see. Well, now let's ask who feels confident to start. Right.
So okay, good point. So someone brought up I don't have a lot of room to store things.
Mm-hmm.
So things that you can do in so things that you can do for storage wise. So what you want to be the most efficient with what you're going to be getting, and the things that you would want to store, make a little bit of room for that. What can you fit under your bed? Like, what can you fit in the small nook of your closet? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be pantry space. I think that a lot of people believe that they have to have pantry, like a big pantry to do that. And you don't necessarily have to have a ridiculous amount of pantry space, because everything that you should be buying, with the exception of, like frozen meats or things like that, you really want them to be in a in a space. They don't need to be in a designated food space, because they should be safe. They should be packaged well enough. They should be stored in like a bin, or they should be stored in some way that's going to preserve them well enough so that they aren't going to get critters in them, and it can be stored under your bed in a plastic bin or something like that. So
Yeah,
you have to get creative with it.
Yeah, if space is an issue, focus on the things that matter the most, and if you want to maybe find a friend or a couple of friends that you can say, hey, let's split this huge 25-pound bag of beans, and things like that. Like here in North Carolina, we have a lot more room than we did in Brooklyn. So now we're saying like, oh, hey, we can split a whole cow with somebody. We couldn't fit the entire cow, but we can fit half a cow. But we get the price discount of a whole cow. And so that can be a good solution, is just to try to find people to share with.
Yeah. So someone also asked if we mentioned Azure Standard and the Weston A price, or the Real Milk email. So yes, I can send all of those things out to everyone, and we can get that. We can get you that information. We'll have I can send out a list of any of the sites that we recommended or discussed in the call.
Great. And then once you start preparing and gathering supplies, the next step is to properly store, preserve, and organize. And so we're going to cover that in our next webinar. And this is the link here, but we'll send that out to everybody as well. Oops.
I can actually send out links.
Yeah, maybe you could share that.
Yeah.
Yep, share that link. Great. And then obviously this is all in alignment with what we are teaching about health and nutrition. And so these are all solutions that make this lifestyle simpler and more affordable and less stressful as well. So these are things that we would be doing even if there wasn't all of this uncertainty and instability, because it makes our lifestyle easier.
Mhm.
And so if that's something that you or somebody is also looking for in their lives and wants to see that as a part of their solution to their health issues, then we can get on a call and talk about what that would look like and start to really make some big changes in the world by living this lifestyle and demonstrating how getting away from the confusion and the complexities of the corporatized, centralized food system allows us to enjoy more of who we are and what we love about life. Great. So,
Any other questions before we sign off?
great. And let's see, I'll just send out a quick, was this helpful? Yes? No. Great. And if you can let us know, did you find this helpful? Excellent. Great. Well, that's what we were hoping, that this would be helpful. And it looks like all 7 of you said yes. So that's wonderful. And then we will have a video of this available. So if there's anybody that didn't make it live, or if you know somebody that might also enjoy having this information right now, please feel free to share that, and hopefully to see you on the next time.
You all sign up for if you're interested, sign up for the next call that will be about organizing your food storage, or even more detailed, like in Eric Dahl's case of asking, like, how can I store food in a small space, things like that, and how can we be more prepared and with the storage and creating systems.
Hooray.
And preserve foods. Yay.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day and stay safe and stock up.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.